Hello, listeners and fellow book lovers. Welcome to The Book Snug, a bi-weekly conversational podcast about books and the reading life. My name is Julia.
And my name is Stephany.
We're a mother and daughter who love reading and talking about books, the ones we adore and the ones we don't. We're delighted you're here, so grab your favorite hot drink or ice-cold beverage and settle in for another cozy, bookish chat.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, Mom.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. What do you have in your mug?
I am drinking, I believe it was a Harney & Sons. It's a chocolate tea. Chocolate black tea, I think.
That sounds delicious. It smells good. It smells like chocolate.
Yeah, it's my version of a hot chocolate.
It's probably better for you than actual hot chocolate.
Yeah. What are you drinking?
I am also drinking a Harney & Sons tea. Mm-hmm. I am drinking Gingerbread Festival.
Oh, nice. Oh, that sounds warm and spicy.
It is. It is a little spicy, very warm, very Christmassy.
Nice.
Speaking of Christmas, it is pretty much over when this podcast drops.
Yes.
We will be the Wednesday after Christmas. And it's during this time of year that I really like to spend some time reflecting on the year in a lot of different ways. Just reflecting on whether or not I've met my goals for the year. And part of that is a reflection on my reading life. So I thought it would be fun to do a little bit of reflecting together on our reading life. I really enjoy looking back if I've done a reading challenge. And I did do a reading challenge this year. So it is extra fun to take some time to see, did I fulfill the reading challenge prompts? How successful I was. I also always evaluate, did I meet my book number goals or plans I had for my reading?
Sure.
Do you do any reflection on your reading life, or is this a new concept to you that I'm bringing for the first time?
Well, I think historically I have just read and moved on. I mean, I think buying books and seeing them on your shelves is a way of reflecting on what you're reading. But I have started to journal. Like, actually, I have a book journal where I keep track of the books that I'm reading, which by default is then allowing me to reflect on in each section. And I can get into more detail of this, but in each section of my journal, I have a specific spot that says life season while reading. So I can write the month that I was reading, what was happening in my life at the same time. So not only as I'm looking back, can I see, oh, this was tagged as 2022, or this is who gave me this book, or this is who I borrowed it from, or whatever. I can also see, oh, this was during our trip to Florida in March, or whatever it was. So it's also like a memory tracker at the same time.
Yeah, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Plus, I think where we are in our life impacts our enjoyment of particular books, or the way that we evaluate a book is strongly influenced by what we're experiencing at the time, whether it's an easy period of our life or a more difficult period, what we're feeling emotionally.
Right.
So that's a very interesting way to track your reading.
Yeah. And I'm just finding that I'm at the age where I don't want to lose track of the things that I've been doing or the memories that I'm making. So I at least have this journal that I can go back to and be like, okay, these are the memories that I have in this avenue of my life. So that's been cool too.
I keep track for the most part on Goodreads. I document what I'm reading. I don't publicly review books, but there is a place to privately keep notes. And I do write some notes for every book in that private section. And I do always rate my books. There is a star rating on Goodreads. So I do that. The star ratings for me are very subjective. My ratings are based solely on my level of enjoyment of reading the book. I am not evaluating the book for creative content or artistic ability or anything like that. It's mostly has to do with my personal enjoyment of the book. So it's very subjective. I also use Goodreads to make a book number goal every year. You can do that, and it shows up on your homepage. So every year I make the same book number goal, 65 books, and you're smiling. I do this because it's a number that I know that in any given year, unless something horrible would happen,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be able to meet that book number goal.
Right. It's an easy goal for you.
It's an easy goal, so I'm not stressed out.
Yeah.
I'm not getting to the end of the year looking for 10 really short books I can read in a day so I can meet my reading goal.
Yeah, it's easy, simple, positive reinforcement.
Right.
You see it done and you move on.
It's completely done. I feel good about myself. Yeah. So this year, I surpassed my reading goal by quite a bit. Like I said, my number was 65 books, and by the end of this year, I will have read over 100. Because right now I'm reading book number 99 and book number 100, and I still have a couple days in December left. And the days after Christmas are big reading days for me because they're very quiet, relaxing days at home. So I will definitely get past 100 this year. Mm-hmm. Goodreads is telling me that's more than 150% of my goal. So it has been a great reading year in that regard. Plus, most of my books have been 4 or 5 star reads, and I am very pleased with that. Do you make any kind of book number goal? Is there a certain number of books you'd like to try to read a year, or is that not something you even consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think this year, because I am reflecting on my reading a little bit more, it's definitely something I'm paying more attention to. I think in the past, it was just, I just wanted to read, but I never really took the time to think about it. I do know that there have been years where I have just read and read and read. I know specifically, while I was reading the Harry Potter series, I read one of the thicker books in like 72 hours.
Right.
So there have been times where I have read a lot. This year, I didn't set a goal. I mean, other than my goal being to read my TBR list, which I know that's
we're going
to
talk about that. Yeah.
So my goal was just to get through my to be read list of my physical books. But I didn't have a number because I didn't know how to yet structure how I was going to do that. But as I'm totaling up the books at this point, I think I'm at about 20. Now I am in the middle of 2 for Christmas, but 20 is my number for the year.
Okay.
which it's my number. I'll just recognize it for what it is.
But I don't want you to feel like 20 is a bad number because I read over 100. We are in completely
very
different periods in our life.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I am only working part-time right now by choice. I have a lot of extra leisure time at the moment. That will change. But for right now, I'm just really enjoying all of that extra time. Whereas you're working full-time, you have responsibilities outside of work. And I think it's mostly reflective of where we are.
Seasons of life.
Yeah, exactly.
Which then next year, especially because we have at least one vacation planned, my number is going to be higher by default because
we'll be away for a week with nothing to do but sitting on the beach
reading.
With our toes in the sand.
Oh, there's nothing like it in the whole world.
Are you satisfied with the 20 books? I mean, I know we just talked about 20 is where you are. It's not disappointing for you in any way, is it?
I think because, again, to kind of go back, because this is my first year of looking at it, I have no personal history to like gauge, is this normal? Like, where am I at? So I'll just take it as the reality of the situation and be like, okay, this is what I did this year, and just kind of see how things go next year. I mean, 20 for me as an overall reader feels very, very low. But again, I think that that's just because of the free time that I have available and the other things that I have in my life going on. So
it is still well above the average number of books that Americans read, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So,
which is sad.
It is sad. It's sad, for sure. Beyond choosing a number of books to read in 2022, which you did not do, but I did you have any other reading goals you want to share? And whether or not you were successful with them.
Yeah. So my major goal for this year was to get through my TBR list. And these are my physical books at home that I have on my shelf that I have not read.
That you own.
Yes, that I own. And this is a goal that's not specific to this year. I think I started at maybe the end of 2020.
Okay. So you've been working on this for a while.
Yeah. I put no buy bans on myself in a couple of different categories. And that the root of that is a whole conversation for a whole other time. I don't need to get into that really. But I chose books to be part of this no buy ban for me because financial reasons. Everything is so much more expensive right now that if I'm dropping $60 on 2 books a go, there goes a tank of gas.
Yeah.
So just kind of thinking about that in terms of the finances, but also I have so many books that I was obviously interested in when I purchased them that why have I not read them yet?
Right.
So my goal has been to get through this. There is a little caveat. There are a couple of caveats though. Firstly, if I read a book and I don't like it and I get rid of it, that is okay for me to get another one because it's the exchange. If I was doing something and it's like clothing. If you decide you don't want this piece of clothing, you can go out and get another one.
And replace it.
Right, that kind of thing.
If something goes out, then something can come in.
Yes, that's how I was trying to say that.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of different stipulations, though, in that I mentioned in our first episode that I'm a collector of antique books at antique stores. So those books for me don't fall into this category of no buy ban.
Okay.
Because that's a collection, not my active reading stash.
That you're currently building and plan on continuing to build.
Yes. And then because I'm also collecting books from my childhood, if I see books at the thrift store that fall into that category, that's different again than going to Target for a number of other things and buying 5 books while I'm there.
Right.
Like this is more to target impulsive book buying.
Okay.
Which I would say maybe my success rate is about 90% on this. I did purchase, so I know that I mentioned I was reading For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. That was an impulse buy. And I think I bought a couple of others this year in kind of that vein. But books that I purchased from like gift cards for my birthday are different.
Or, they don't count.
Right.
Those are gifts.
Right. Or books that I get while on vacation. Again, these are different circumstances. I mean, in my regular day-to-day life.
Yeah. Well, and buying books on vacation, depending on where you're going, it's something you're going to do.
Right.
So you plan that into your budget for your vacation. That's a little bit different than, like you said, going to Target and seeing a book that's 30% off.
Right.
And you're like, oh, it's 30% off. I'm just going to throw
What
this
a
in
steal.
my cart. Yeah. And it gets lost in the toilet paper and the cat food. And you can justify it.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, books about books. So like Inkheart or... That's the first one that came to my mind. But like any book about books is magical. So then by default, books are magical. So if I leave them sitting on my floor by my bookshelf for months and months, to me, that's highly disrespectful.
Of your magical books.
Yes. So I don't want to disrespect my books. Let me read them, enjoy them, and put them in a proper place. But I am proud of the fact that I did relatively well with this goal. And I would say that even for my no buy bans across the board, I've done pretty well with that. That's not to say that my TBR list of my unowned books, that's still very, very much growing. It's just what I have at home. It's what I'm focusing on.
Well, I have 2 projects that I worked on in 2022. One was very successful and one was an abject failure. I'm going to talk about the failure first, just to get it out of the way. I decided at the beginning of 2022 that I wanted to read The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I really enjoy the movie. I think the book is going to be good. And I just wanted to have the experience of reading it. It is a very chunky book.
It is.
And I should have read it in January or February. I tend to like to really sink into bigger, chunkier books that require a little bit more mental effort in the wintertime because I have the mental capacity to do that and the time to do it.
Well, it's the best atmosphere to settle into something for a long time.
Yeah, that is true. I didn't do it. And I just kept putting it off. Because I thought, now I just don't feel like doing it now because I'm a mood reader. So I would just say, I'll do it next month and then I'll do it next month. Well, we got to about July and I thought, instead of reading it, I'm just going to do it as an audiobook. I should have known better because I do not like listening to long audiobooks. I get to the point where I think I can read faster than I can listen, and I could be done with this book by now.
Yeah.
that means I never picked it up as an audiobook either. So here we are at the end of December, and I am not starting the Count of Monte Cristo now and trying to finish it by the end of 2022. So that's a failure for me. And I am kind of disgusted with myself that I didn't just pick it up and read it. It is going on my 2023 goals. I am going to read it, and I am going to pick it up in January. It'll probably be the very first book that I read for 2023.
So what you're saying is we're going to hear about it for a long time.
Probably. Although if I read it, physically read it probably won't take me that long. Maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It depends.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a mood reader, when I commit to a book, that is the book I'm going to read. So generally, I only have an audiobook and a print book, whether physical or electronic, going at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't have 10 books. That's too frenetic to me.
Right.
I just want to focus on the book I choose, finish it, and move on to the next thing.
Right.
So once I start the Count of Monte Cristo, I'll probably stick with it and read it pretty quickly until it's done.
Yeah. I do want to, you made a point here about audiobooks, and we should have mentioned this earlier, but I think that that's also why your reading number is so high, is that you do audiobooks plus a regular book at the same time.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas I tend not to do audiobooks. Actually, if I do an audiobook, it's a very rare situation.
Yeah.
So I think that that's also an interesting factor in those numbers as well.
Why our book number spread is so big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about at least a third of my reading is done through audiobooks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's my big fat failure. The other goal I had for 2022 was to finish the Book Girls Guide Reading Challenge, A Lifetime of Reading. And this reading challenge had 12 prompts, one for every month. And for each month, all I had to do was read a book that contained a protagonist whose age fell within the range of the prompt for the month. So for instance, in January, I needed to read a book that had a protagonist, a main character, whose age fell between 0 and 10 years. And then in February, the main protagonist needed to be 10 to 20 or teen.
Sure.
And then throughout the year, it went like that. I completed the challenge with flying colors. I decided to do a reading challenge because I also wanted to read from my owned books. And I have many, many, many owned books, physical books, electronic books, and audiobooks. It's getting ridiculous. I have a book buying issue. I will be the first to admit it. And I wanted to be able to just read from my shelves a little more. So I ended up reading 39 books for this challenge. Each month, I almost always read more than one book.
Sure.
And of the 39 books, 54% were from my bookshelves, from my Nook, or from my Audible account.
Oh, cool.
So I didn't read, they didn't all come from my own books, but I did a fair amount. So I was pleased with that. And I was pleased with the number of books I was able to do for the reading challenge. I only had to do 12, and like I said, I ended up doing 39.
Nice.
So that was a success for me.
Yeah.
The bad thing is I completely burned myself out.
But this is, in our conversations, this is a pretty regular thing, though, of you doing a challenge and getting burned out halfway through and saying, I'm never doing this ever again. And then
I end up doing another reading challenge. And it's because the reading challenges help me to broaden my reading scope and maybe pick books I wouldn't normally pick, or they force me to do more literary reading, which I enjoy. I very much enjoy, but I don't tend to pick up that much on my own as a mood reader. So reading challenges really do help me as a mood reader focus a little bit. If I just let myself go, I end up not reading with the depth or breadth that I would like to. But I almost always end up overdoing it, and then I burn myself out, and I don't want to do another reading challenge. The other thing I find is by November or December, my reading really slacks off.
Sure.
Most of it has to do with just the holidays. There's just so many. In November and December, there are so many entertainment temptations besides reading.
Sure.
That I just don't dedicate that much time to reading books. I'm doing other fun stuff instead.
Right.
When I do a reading challenge, that slacking off is even worse because I'm just kind of sick of reading, period.
Yeah.
For those listeners who don't know what a reading challenge is, it is usually a year-long group of prompts for readers to meet to encourage them to read either specifically or more widely. So, for example, there's a reading challenge that's called Mount TBR. And all you do is pick the number of books per year that you're going to read off of your shelf that you already own.
Hey, so I'm doing that.
You're doing it. You're actually doing it, and you don't even know it.
Don't even know it. I'll take it.
The reading challenge that I did, I explained I'm given the prompts. It has a very specific focus based on age of protagonist. But the Book Girls Guide, which is a book blog or book website, they have 4 different types of reading challenges. One of the reading challenges that I did in 2021 was to read around the world. So each month I was given the prompt to pick a book with a setting in a particular geographical area of the world. But there are all kinds of reading challenges, and you can get them online. A lot of book blogs do reading challenges. If you do BookTube at all, lots of booktubers host reading challenges. And I find them to be very beneficial, like I said, for my reading. But I also tend to go a little overboard, and then I get burnt out. So that's what a reading challenge is.
Yeah.
And if you have, you guys, Mark and Aaron did reading challenges in the summer through the library. Almost every year, you would get a paper that had all these little prompts that you had to complete. And then you got tickets to Dutch Wonderland, which is a
little amusement
park in Lancaster County. Yeah. That's a reading challenge. The ones that I do are grown-up reading challenges.
Right. I don't remember those requiring reading as much as, here's a paper project, or do this thing, or do whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, even in elementary school, if we read 50 minutes for so many days of the month, we got the pizza cards.
Yeah, the Pizza Hut coupons.
Yeah. So I think I have been doing reading challenges. I think I buck discipline, or I buck routine. So if I'm told do this for so long, I get halfway through the year and I'm like, absolutely screw that. I'm over it.
That's your rebel nature. Yeah, we're both rebels in that respect.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the reading challenges work for me for the most part. Like I said, I do tend to burn out towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
But this reading challenge I completed, even though in November and December I only read 1 book for each prompt because I was just done.
Right. Well, and I think that's what's interesting for me is I rebel against routine or whatever. I don't want to be told what to do or how to spend my time. Me, myself, and I were working on that. However, for this working through my TBR list, it's requiring discipline because I like Barnes & Noble. I want to go walk around the shelves and spend unlimited money.
Right.
But I'm really enjoying the ability, the physical nature of seeing this TBR list reduce, or seeing how I'm adding to my book journal. That visual component is keeping Miss Rebellion a little bit more quelled because I can see progress happening instead of not.
It keeps you motivated.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that is what works for me with reading challenges. Almost all reading challenges have a printout that you can fill out. You fill out the books that you're reading. You can color stuff in. So for me too, that is very motivational because I see myself making progress.
Yeah.
And I am far more likely to pick up books off of my shelf if somebody says, read a book with blue on the cover.
Oh, sure.
So that's like a typical prompt in a reading challenge. And you can make it as hard or as easy as you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Some reading challenges have 52 prompts, so it's a prompt per week. Some only have 12.
Mm-hmm.
You just decide what it is you want to do and do it.
Right. There's so many out there that you can really smorgasbord it.
Yeah. I mean, I could put some websites up. I'll put some websites in the show notes if anybody's interested in checking out some reading challenges.
Yep.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered 2022.
Mm-hmm.
We've tidied it up. So why don't we take a look at 2023? Do you have any goals or plans for your reading for 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to do the exact same thing I have been doing because I'm still working through my list and my shelves. That being said, I noticed here as I was prepping for this episode that I have read several books and didn't put them in my book journal. So definitely I'm going to try to be a little bit more on top of that because that ultimately just helps me stay on top of, okay, this is how many I've read or this is how far I have to go yet. So for 2023, I'm looking to do, like I said, the same thing, but maybe taking it up a notch. So I am pulling, I found this year that I'm much more of a seasonal reader than I think I ever was, that there are certain topics or themes or plots that I want more at certain points of the year. So I've started to pull together my books that are reminding me of those seasons. So I already have my spring and my summer piles pulled together, my winter included, but I'm getting ready to work through that. So that's been prepped for a while. It's a long-winded way of saying that as I'm looking at these piles, they are very high. So
you mean you have a lot of books per pile?
Yes. So 20 I might keep as my reading goal, allowing myself the ability to easily top that. I think I work really well under vague, achievable goals. So having read 20 books, one of my piles already is 70 books. So right there, that's a pretty good start.
Right. You know, if you finish that, you're well on your way to getting to 20 books plus.
Right. Now, I will say, I think I'm falling into the trap of I have to read all of my spring-like books for the spring, when in reality, I don't think I can get through 7 400-page books in 3 months.
Right.
That's a lot for me.
So it's actually your pile of possibilities.
Yes.
It's not your pile of required reading.
Well, I think if you were to ask me what is it, I would say it's my required reading. But in reality, it's these are the books I would like to read in this season.
A pile of possibilities.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, I think for 2023, it's just going to do the same thing and just take it up a notch to see if I can kind of read more.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if you read 21 books, you will get an more. A+.
Yes. Yeah. What are your plans or your goals for 2023?
Well, I already mentioned my nemesis, The Count of Monte Cristo. I definitely want to read that in 2023. And I can't think of an excuse why I shouldn't read it. You've inspired me. So I definitely want to read more from my own shelves, books I already own. So I think I'm going to try to read at least 3 books a month from my own shelves. And I would like one of those books to be a nonfiction book. Because one of the things I noticed when I was looking back through my statistics from 2022 is that I read very few nonfiction. I don't even think I read one nonfiction book a month.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty low for me. So I would like to read one nonfiction book a month. And then 65 books for the year.
I will be surprised, Mom, if you do not hit that mark. When you say nonfiction, so I think this is the way that my brain is, but I automatically go to college history textbooks. I'm assuming that's not what you mean because that sounds very dry and dull, but
that is not what I mean. That is what your brother Aaron would mean, but that is not what I mean. I mean any book that is discussing factual information, such as narrative nonfiction or a book that is discussing a particular happening in history, a how-to book, a cookbook, even though I don't very often read cookbooks cover to cover. That would be a nonfiction book.
Right, that's a unique situation, cookbooks.
Right. And they can be historical. I read a lot of historical nonfiction, but they tend to be told in a story-like manner. So Erik Larson would be a
The
good...
Devil in White City.
Yes. Yeah, he is a very famous narrative nonfiction writer. Spiritual books, did I say that? That would be another category of nonfiction that I enjoy reading. I feel like nonfiction helps my perspective of the world.
Oh, yeah.
And my understanding of people and history. So I just feel like I need to be reading more of that than I am now.
Yes. I don't read very many nonfiction. And I think it's just because fiction holds my attention better.
Yeah.
But I definitely agree that in reading the nonfiction, whether it's not necessarily autobiographies, but narrative nonfiction.
Yeah.
Whether about somebody's life or about whatever. Or I think about like Caitlin Doughty's books about death practices, things that are definitely informative.
That is definitely nonfiction.
Right.
Yeah.
Those, I always enjoy reading those because they do increase my awareness of the world.
Yeah.
But I have to be really interested in the book in order to read it. And so I think that doesn't happen very often because I don't often find nonfiction books that get my attention.
Right. Not like fairy tales.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely a heavy skew towards that.
Yeah, murder mysteries. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of books that we do enjoy reading, we have some time to talk about the books that we've currently been reading, what we have recently read, what we're reading now, and what we're hoping to read in the near future. Yeah. So what have you been reading lately, Julia?
Well, I finished The Historian very beginning of December, so I just about made my goal to get it done before Christmas time. I have some thoughts on the book, but next episode we're sharing our superlatives for 2022, so I'll keep my thoughts till then.
Okay.
But I think it was the perfect book for November because there was some academic themes to it and almost like a treasure hunt without being a treasure hunt. I really enjoyed it, and so it was a perfect one to settle in rainy November evening and just read. So I enjoyed it for that capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you finished any recently?
I've been hitting the Christmas books hard the last couple of weeks. I recently finished a Christmas murder mystery, which sounds like an odd combination, but it was a lot of fun. It was a Golden Age murder mystery written by Georgette, who is a British author, and the book is called The Christmas Party. It's a closed-door mystery, which simply means that the murder takes place in a locked room. So you have no idea how the murderer got in, how they got out, how it happened. So you spend the entire book trying to figure out how the murder took place, as well as figuring out who did it.
Sure.
I figured it out pretty early on, which did not decrease my enjoyment of the book.
Sure.
Even though I knew how the murder happened, or I was pretty sure I did, I enjoy just watching the investigation unfold. One of the reasons I love murder mysteries so much is I like getting behind the murder to the why. So you investigate people and relationships and histories, and I just enjoy that whole puzzle part of it. The only thing I'm going to say about this particular story is nobody was likable.
That's no fun.
Yeah. Of course, the person who was murdered was horrible, but the rest of the characters were not very likable either. So that makes it a little bit less enjoyable for me. But overall, it was a pretty solid read. I would say fine. So 3 stars. And I enjoyed the Christmas atmosphere. I enjoyed being in the 1930s, 1940 time period. So it was fine. It was exactly what I wanted at the time I was reading it. Yeah. Didn't require any brain cells, really. It was just entertainment.
Yeah.
And then the second book I just recently finished was a book called The Christmas Bookshop by Jenny Colgan. This is not a Christmas romance, because the romance in this book, I feel, was very secondary to what was going on. It's about a woman who lives in Scotland, on the west coast of Scotland. She's late 20s, early 30s, is working at a department store, a local department store that she has worked at since she graduated from high school. And times are tough and the department store closes and she loses her job, has to move back home, and she's just kind of mopey and depressed and completely unmotivated to look for another job. And her mother asks this woman, her name is Carmen, asks Carmen's older sister to help her. Carmen's older sister is a very successful lawyer living in Edinburgh. She has 3 children already, and she's pregnant again. And she's also the lawyer for a client who owns a bookstore that's failing. And the client wants to sell the bookstore and can't do it until he can prove he's making a profit. So Carmen goes to live with her sister in Edinburgh, and the story goes from there. What I loved about this book is that it is Edinburgh at Christmas time. I don't know if that I need to say anything else.
Right.
It's cozy. It is so atmospheric. The Christmas feels are so real. The bookshop is located on Victoria Street, which is very near Edinburgh Castle and Grassmarket. And I just can't say enough about the Christmas vibes. And most of the story takes place in this bookshop. So it's a book about a bookshop.
Yeah.
It's magical. It's Christmassy. It's an upswing book, which means Carmen goes from being kind of unlikable to getting her life put back together and headed in the right direction. So I just really enjoyed it. There are 3 things, though, that I just feel like I need to mention about this book. Number 1, in the beginning, Carmen is the type of character that I can't usually get behind. She is an unmotivated, kind of whiny, late 20s, early 30s character who blames everybody else for her issues. Everyone who's successful, she hates because she's doing everything she can not to be. And so I just really struggled with her at the beginning. There's a love triangle in this story, which I hate. And the only reason it worked for me is the person who doesn't win is the person you don't want to win. So it's fine. And you're happy for the couple that actually got together. And then the third thing is there is a miscommunication trope, but the miscommunication makes sense because the people are almost strangers. So that's okay too. But overall, if you're looking for a light, fluffy, very warm feeling Christmas book, I would recommend this one. It was very nice.
Yeah, it just sounds fun and cozy and yeah. And who wouldn't want to be in Edinburgh at Christmas time?
I can't. Yeah. It's snowy. It's cold. There's a big festival, which I didn't know about. Yeah.
When I go back to Scotland, I will be going to Edinburgh, and I would love to see it at that time of year. I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we were there in the summer,
which was lovely to begin with.
I loved Edinburgh, but I just can't imagine it at Christmas time. It must be just wonderful. Yeah. So that's what I've read. What are you currently reading?
Yeah. So for Christmas time, this is generally when I revert back to childhood memories. Christmas for me is it's a magical, childlike wonder, romanticized time of year, and I want to take full advantage of that.
Right, like we talked about in our last episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this year I'm doing nostalgia reads. I am listening to, now I mentioned I don't do audiobooks, but I'm listening to an audio version of The Christmas Carol. I'm listening to it through LibriVox, which is a free audiobook platform. It's being narrated by, I believe it's Glenn Haverstick. Either way, he's doing it with an English accent, which is how I wanted to hear the story.
He's American, but he's using an English accent.
Yes, which is lovely. As I've been listening to it, I'm doing it at night, as I'm putting laundry away before bed or tidying up cookies, like whatever it is. I've been really enjoying that. But I've been able to actually hear some of Charles Dickens' humor, which I never caught before, which I have laughed out loud. So this has just been really, really enjoyable. And then I'm physically reading The Legend of Holly Claus by Brittney Ryan. So this is a middle grade book, but it's a chunky middle grade book. And it's the story of Holly Claus, who is the child of Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And this book is lovely because it's talking about the power of love and goodness and purity, but purity in the sense of pure loving each other and what that sacrifice looks like. And it's set in the land of immortals, which kind of sets up the story of how the Santa Claus story came to be. Mm-hmm. And then also in the turn of the century in New York City, around Christmas time as well. It's a purely enjoyable read. Now there is a very unpleasant character in the story.
You almost need that for it to really be wonderful.
Right. But as you're reading this book, and this is a book that I know that you've read to us.
Yeah. At least part of it I did.
Yeah. I just am, the story is lovely. It's detailed. As you're reading it, it just feels like somebody's telling it to you softly and gently. And it's the kind of book that I want to read. And like, this is a weird thing, but like someplace where it's snowing all the time and I'm in a cabin with a roaring fire and a cup of something warm, like that kind of cozy, safe kind of storytelling. So I've been really enjoying this one, and I'm taking my time with both The Christmas Carol and Legend of Holly Claus because I want to savor the nostalgia of these stories before Christmas time. What about you, Mom?
I am currently listening to The Duke Alone, which is a Christmas romance. Like I said, I'm hitting the Christmas books hard. Mm-hmm. This is basically Regency romance fan fiction of Home Alone.
It sounds fun, but weird at the exact same time.
And you know what? It is. It is. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is. It's fun, but it's weird. The fun part is that this young woman, her name is Lady Myrtle McCoy. So she's part of the ton of England, of London. She is left in the townhouse by her family when they all go to Scotland for Christmas.
Which, how rude.
Right. I'm not even going to go into why, but it is very
rude.
The family has left because they're going to have all this construction done on the house because it's basically falling apart. There is a secondary story with the possibility of thieves wanting to come and steal her father's treasures. He has all these antiquities.
Sure.
There is a duke that lives next door who is kind of rude and solitary, and he just wants to be left alone. And she's very gregarious and outgoing, and she's pesting the life out of him because she's alone and scared. I mean, imagine during the 1820s, a young woman in London. She can't go out by herself.
Well, and she has no hands at house. So
she has no servants. She can't dress herself.
Yeah.
She doesn't know how to start a fire.
Or feed herself.
Yeah. I mean, it would be kind of a dire circumstance. But the issue I have with this book, and I don't think it's open door, but there is some romantic involvement. Those scenes are just a little on the cheesy side. I don't want to say ick because they're not ick. They're just cringy. Exactly. So
those are the worst.
And the other thing that is bothering me, and this is a personal thing, I am very sensitive to what I call author tics. When an author uses a certain word over and over again, or a certain phrasing, or they focus on a certain something. So this author is very focused on eyebrows.
It's just such a weird one of all of the tics. Eyebrows.
Eyebrows are going up. They're waggling or like coming down in a frown. I can't even think of the phrasing, but there's a lot of eyebrow movement. And I know the author is just using this for gestures, like facial expression, but honestly, it's all the time. That's how they communicate, is with their eyebrows. And it just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm struggling a little bit with that. At this point, it's a 3-star listen for me. I don't know if it's going to get better or worse. It's okay. It's doing what I want it to do while I'm driving around taking care of Christmas errands, but I'm not sure it's a book I'm going to recommend to anybody. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the premise sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one, the idea of being left alone, left by your family, just makes me all kinds of things. So I'm not sure. It's a very interesting premise, though.
It is. Yeah. Like I said, it's doing what I want it to.
Yeah.
And then I just started reading Sherlock Holmes and the Christmas Demon. Mm-hmm. I can't speak too much about it. It's a murder mystery. Mm-hmm. It's about a young woman who thinks she's being haunted by the Black Thuric, which is like a Christmas spirit that will come and steal children and eat them, or leave birch branches if the child's been bad.
So
year.
Like Krampus, but not Krampus.
Right. It's exactly like Krampus, just a different country. Mm-hmm. It's good so far. I'm enjoying it, but I can't really speak to it too much. Every time I've come over and I've seen the cover, it just seems like an absolutely incredibly fun story. And that's written by James Lovegrove. Mm-hmm. I think he's taken over writing Sherlock Holmes, modern Sherlock Holmes stories. Sure. Oh, what a task. That's probably so much fun. Yeah. The writing is good. Yeah. I can say that. Oh, good. So far. Good. Do you have anything coming up next on the docket? What's on your pile of winter reads? So I do have my winter reads by my bed so that I'm seeing them. But I probably won't read anything. Once I finish Holly Claus and Christmas Carol, I probably won't read anything until the new year, just to really enjoy Christmas. I had the Devil in White City by Erik Larson as the top book. Yeah. My winter books are generally a little bit darker in theme, maybe deal with more serious topics. For me, that just fits what I want in the winter. So that one was up first. Then I had a gift card for my birthday, so I went to Barnes & Noble and I picked up The Book of Night by Holly Black, which was on my I want to read TBR that I don't have. And that was a birthday gift card. Right. Yes. So you weren't breaking your no buy. Yes. Okay. I mean, it exceeded the gift card price a little bit, but it wasn't like I was going to Barnes & Noble specifically to... Right. And this one sounds really fun because it's about go mists, which is like magic and dark magic and shadows, and it sounds really interesting. Yeah. I broke a major reading cardinal sin the other day and was using it as a hard surface to seal and address my Christmas cards. Yeah. I don't recommend anybody does that. It's disrespectful to the books. However, the reason I'm saying that is because as I had it flipped over, the reviews for the book were on the back, which is totally normally fine. But the card that I was working on happened to slip, and I saw the review underneath it, and it's talking about kinky sex in this book. Oh my goodness. So I'm like, that's not entirely what I wanted to read next. I was not. No, thank you. So I don't know where that one and I are going to stand. Yeah. But then I also purchased, this was also with a gift card. Again, apologies. Sustainable Badass by Gittemarie Johansan, who is a sustainability influencer I follow from Denmark. Okay. And so this is the book that she's written, which is incredibly informative, has lots of good stuff in it. It's a nonfiction book. It is. So irony of ironies. But that one I might read. So I have 3 vastly different stories to read. I don't know which one I'm going to pick up next, but those would be the 3 that I probably look at. Okay. Yeah. They all sound good. Yeah. Yeah. The Book of Night, I have heard mixed reviews for. I'm curious to see, if you do read it, what you think. I mean, it's very short, so I think I could probably read it in a weekend if I'm just trying to, get through it. Mm-hmm. But it's not long. It won't take me long to read. Same with Devil in White City. It's a short book. I know it's heavier, but it'll be short enough that I can kind of read it in maybe a week or so and then move on. Do you know Holly Black? She was one of the authors who wrote the Spiderwick Chronicles. Really? I didn't know that. But it was she a ghostwriter? Because she wrote with. I don't know who the other author is, but she was one of the authors. I'm pretty sure. I didn't know that. Maybe I am telling a total fabrication, but I think that she was one of the authors. Interesting. I'd have to look into that. Yeah. Yeah. Spiderwick, that is a major throwback to childhood reading.
I don't see them anymore anywhere.
No, but I do think there's a new Spiderwick Chronicles movie coming out.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to look at that. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Well, I am sticking with my Christmas theme. And the next book I'm going to read is Murder After Christmas by Rupert Latimer. This is another golden age murder mystery. It's from the British Library Crime Classics.
So you know it's going to be lovely. Murder aside.
Somebody dies the day after Christmas and we figure out who it is.
What a premise.
I don't know anything else about it. I just know, of course, that the person dies. His name is Uncle Willie. He's rich, truculent, and seemingly propped up by his fierce willpower alone. That's all I know.
It sounds like so much cantankerous fun. Just ridiculousness.
Yeah. So that's really my only plan. And that will probably be my last Christmas read of the year. And then I'll be diving into 2023. And I don't know about you, but I just always get re-excited about the books I have and what I want to read when the new year rolls around. I don't know why. It's just another day. But
I mean, it's the whole idea of here's a whole new year to try things out.
You just feel like it's a fresh start.
And that's how I felt pulling my seasonal stacks of books together. It was like, oh, look at all these opportunities and all these adventures I can have. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Lots of reading fun to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, I am very excited to see what our reading brings for the next year. Some of these things, the books that we talked about this year, might come back up in our next episode where we talk about our superlatives.
Yes.
Which will be tons of fun. We're pulling all of those prompts together right now.
Yeah.
So it'll be really fun to review those books in a little bit more detail. As we kind
our best books,
Yep.
our worst books.
Yeah.
Our biggest disappointments, our biggest surprises.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about all of that.
Yeah, so if you want more of our reading and review, definitely stay tuned for next episode.
Chapter. Yeah.
Hangout time, whatever you want to call it.
It'll be chapter 4 of season 1.
Well, we want to say thank you for hanging out with us today. And we wish you and yours a very, very happy new year.
Yes, we do. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us. We'd love for you to continue today's conversation at the Booksnug_podcast on Instagram and at the Booksnug Podcast on Facebook. All of our episodes can be found wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as at our website, thebooksnugpodcast.buzzsprout.com, where show notes for every episode can be found. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at thebooksnugpodcast@gmail.com.
As C.S. Lewis, one of our favorite authors, famously said, "You can never have a cup of tea large enough or a book long enough to suit me," and we wholeheartedly agree.